Hi, I'm Devin, and this is a Soraka Staff tutorial. Now, Soraka, I have been told, is a popular character from the video game League of Legends. I do not play video games, but my son does, and he and a few of his friends are going to be attending the upcoming Comic-Con. One of his friends is going to be going as Soraka, and somehow I got volunteered to build the staff that Soraka uses. Of course, my first reaction, my first impulse was no. But then again, I thought, it's something I've never done before, something that might be a challenge, might be sort of fun. So this is what I did. One of the first things I did was I took a look at a lot of the different reference images that are available online. There are a lot of different variations, a lot of different versions of the Soraka staff. And so obviously this one is my favorite one here. But after talking to my son, this is the one that we ended up going with. This picture doesn't actually show the bottom of the staff, but we were able to take some images from other skins to create what was going to be the bottom. And then I went ahead and did a quick design on AutoCAD. If you don't have access to AutoCAD, there are a lot of very simple drawing programs that you can use. I really needed this so I can make the template for especially the crescent. So I went ahead and printed out the template for the crescent just using an 8.5 by 11 printer, and that is going to go onto the extruded polystyrene foam board. So I've managed to do a rough cut. Another thing you can do is use a handy zigzag. You can very easily cut these shapes out. So I've taken that pattern and drawn a ridge line. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as the ridge line, and we're going to cut down in this direction and then down in that direction. So you can see how I'm starting to carve, really work my way from that ridge line down. I'm using a simple hand sander, and with this, we're able to get, you can see it's already starting to smooth out. Okay, so now I've got these two halves, and you can see they've been kind of curved out. Do that. Before I glue anything together, I want to make sure that I've got the pole set. So I've got this 1-inch dowel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut something so that I can slide that in there. That way I can work on it, the crescent part of it, without having to deal with the stick, but I'll have that all set. Okay, so what I do is I've already started. I kind of figured out where the pole is going to sit here, and I've measured out the 1 inch, and so that sits in. Now I just need to make sure that I get it the right depth so that I can get the dowel in there. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my Dremel tool, and what we'll do is we'll curve that out. We'll do it to both sides so that we can get that pole in. Okay, so now you can see I've got the grooves here, and so what I can do is kind of fit this in here to see how it would work. Set that in there, and then I'm going to close this up like that. And then what I do is I would glue the two halves together, the crescent, and I just to switch gears and make the tip. And I've sketched out a couple of different things. I didn't do it on the computer because I wanted it to be longer than what I could print out on an 8.5 by 11, and I actually wanted to use something other than just regular paper. You can go out and get cardstock, you can get poster board, but I have these handy files in my file cabinet, and I don't use them all, so perfect. It's a little bit more rigid, a little easier to work with, so let's see if we can get a cut. So what I've done is I've measured out 2 times, pi r, and that will give me this distance here, so I can wrap around 1/2 of the 1-inch dowel. And then I put together this taper. It's approximately 14 inches or so. Okay, so now I've got these kind of scored triangular pieces, and a really simple kind of tip. All I'm going to do is tape them together and then set those on top of the dowel, and that will give us kind of this pointy tip. Okay, so now it's one piece all glued together, and it looks okay. I've cleaned it up a little bit. but there are some ridges and things, some seams I'll need to fill in. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to do that with some very simple spackle. So the spackle actually worked out really well. Did a nice job kind of filling in all the gaps. I was able to, get that to harden, and then I sanded it down using just sanding it by hand, about 230 grit sandpaper, just to kind of even things out. Have it. And now I'm going to start the etching for the lines that are on the actual crescent part. Okay, so now I've marked out the 7 sections. The skin that I'm working off of does have 7 sections with 7 symbols that will end up being etchings that will end up being on this outer part of the crescent. Don't really know, but I'm going to assume that it's repeated on the other side as well. Okay, so now we've got the score marks. Again, I just used my simple keyhole saw. Got it. Well, that worked out pretty well. The Dremel's actually was very easy to use. Let's take a look at some of the other pieces that are going to be put together to create the final staff. We've got the pole itself. Right now it's a 72-inch pole, which may be a bit on the long side, so we may consider cutting that down. We have the tip, which we put together before, and that's going to end up right there. That needs to get finished as well after we've inserted the pole through there. And then we've got a couple of other pieces. The staff actually has a center handle area that has a flare at both the top and the bottom, and they're different. The one on the bottom is more conical. The one on the top kind of flares out in one direction. And I had originally intended to make them out of the styrofoam, but I think it might be easier just to make it out of simple foam, this foam sheet. We'll be able to cut it to the shape that it needs to be, glue it in place, and then we'll finish it so that it gives it some rigidity. The very bottom of the staff is going to have a ball. This is a paper mache ornament, 99 cents. The nice thing with this is, at first I wasn't crazy about the texture because it's paper mache, but I think that once we paint it and finish it, it'll actually turn out looking pretty cool. It'll almost have kind of a crystalline look to it. There are a couple of accent pieces around the ball itself. There are some fingers that reach down, and so I have some more this glittery felt paper as well, and that will act. I'll cut that out to make that piece as well. And the staff for the handle, I'm actually going to just use PVC pipe. It's going to give it a little extra thickness. This is 1 inch. The dowel itself is 1 inch diameter nominal, which means it's not exactly 1 inch. Schedule 40 PVC 1 inch is going to be have an inside diameter that's slightly greater, and so it's not going to fit exactly. So it won't be a complete interference fit, but we'll be able to secure that, probably put up some tape, that'll hold it in place, and then add maybe a couple of screws through just to hold that center part. So that's going to create kind of the handle part of the staff itself. Okay, so I cut out the first accent piece, the top part, out of the felt, and that's going to actually make this piece here, the top of the handle area. And so that's actually just going to wrap around like that. Okay, so that's what that piece looks like. And that's what the bottom piece looks like. Okay, so now we're gonna get ready to start prepping things for the final finish. And so the pieces that we need to finish are, of course, the crescent, the tip, which is here, the accent pieces, and then the ball at the bottom. And so all of these are going to get prepped, and in order to give them some strength, we are going to coat them first. Really, the foam has to get coated before it can accept anything else, or it'll melt. So we're going to coat it with just some very basic wood glue. And this is something that I saw online on one of the other sites. And so, okay, so I've made a template for basically the fingers that will end up coming down and holding the ball at the bottom. And there are going to be 4 of them. And so I've taken that and I've cut out the template here. And so I'll cut those out. And again, this is nice because it's going to have a nice kind of glittery finish, but it's also self-adhesive, so it'll be really easy to stick that on there. Okay, so I went and I put a couple of some more accent pieces on just to dress this up a little bit. And then I drilled 2 holes on the pole itself, and that's what I'm going to use to secure it to the dowel itself. I've done 3 layers of glue, and that's really to seal it up, but also to give it a little bit of a roughness so the next layer can stick to it. And that next layer is going to be liquid plastic. And I'm using Smooth Cast 300 because it was the only one they had at the store. Smooth Cast is basically a 2-part resin, and you've got to work very quickly. So what I did is I've got my A and my B cups, and then I poured them into this cup, and it turns into a nice clear liquid, very easy to work with. And I started coating one side of the crescent, this side. You can't really see it, it's still wet. Started doing that, and then I learned a very valuable lesson about Smooth Cast 300, and that is that you have about maybe 2 to 3 minutes to work, because it goes from a nice liquid to this white plastic guck almost immediately. So you can see, also you can't tell, but it's super hot. It heats up when it cures. So this is rock solid now. I was working with it and then trying to get some pretty quick strokes onto the piece, and then it started turning a little white, and really within seconds it solidified into this, and it's solid plastic now. So this stuff's not very cheap, and so I guess the best advice is to mix very, very small quantities. You can see that was kind of what I was hoping to mix for each part. I'm going to do maybe a third of that in the future, so I can hopefully use all of it and I don't end up with all of this waste. Okay, so after putting about 4 coats of the Smooth On plastic, it's got a nice shell to it. I went ahead and sanded out a lot of the drip marks, but aside from that, left it with this sort of weathered look. So now it's ready for the finish. I went ahead and hit it with a plastic primer because it does now have the plastic finish. It was very nice to see that the plastic primer did not eat away any of the styrofoam underneath. It looks like everything's pretty nicely sealed, so that's a good thing. So now it's ready for the gold paint. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and attach the crescent to the staff. I'll just go ahead and insert the dowel through the opening, get some glue on there, and then we'll attach the tip, and then we'll set it all with some hot glue. And now we're also going to hot glue gun the orange ball at the bottom of the staff. Okay, so here's the final product. The Soraka staff is now assembled. Got all the pieces put together, added the ball at the bottom and the accent piece as well. So there it is, the Soraka staff.